Well, good morning. Thanks for joining me here on this episode of the Channel CEO. A couple housekeeping items, two actually. Normally I have one, now I get two to talk about, at least for the next 19 days. But first, next week on the 24th, we have the upcoming M&A Roadshow up in Newark, New Jersey. We are almost at capacity. I think we might have 2 or 3 spots left for MSPs or just those that are looking in general to understand the MSP M&A marketplace and the landscape. I think we've got a couple spots left, like 3 or 4, something like that. Make sure you go out there. We'll have links in the show notes to register. I think there's a link or a banner at the top of channelprogram.com. So check that out. And we are squarely in the middle of the election countdown. And what we've done is we've combined the election countdown with the channel technology map. So we're 19 days out from the big election here in the States. Today, we put out the election map, the portion of it featuring compliance. So definitely go out and if you're on LinkedIn, just search for technology map or go to my page on LinkedIn. You'll see everything about the technology map. Or again, you can go to channelprogram.com, download the technology map for 2024. There's a phenomenal report that's alongside the stack rankings of the technologies out there, broken out by the top 19 different product categories. So go ahead and check that out as well. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our guest up on stage here because Brent down in Atlanta, and we were just talking about some fun stuff down in Atlanta that I got to experience here not too long ago. So with that, let me bring on Brent. There you are. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you.
It's I was saying that I had an opportunity. This has been maybe 3 months ago now. 3 months ago, I was down in Atlanta and impromptu got to see the Rolling Stones. I don't know if I'm exactly in their demographic. They're a little bit before my time, but I have a brother that's 10 years older than me, and he squarely fits the demographic. And so it was a last minute excursion to go see the Rolling Stones. We were up close and up front and up personal. And I got to tell you, I mean, the guys, all of them, I guess the ones that are still alive, specifically the lead singer Mick Jagger, is 80 plus years old, and the guy was sprinting up and down the stage for almost 3 hours. It was quite remarkable. So that was my last excursion in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'm passionate about health and wellness, and it's incredible that man is still just as able and energetic as ever. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. All right, it's enough about the Rolling Stones and what have you. But no, but thanks for joining me because we were talking and the great thing about this podcast is that we get to be timely, topical, and really talk about I think a lot of things that are impacting the industry and we'll get into RevIO and what you guys are doing and all the great things and the web app and PSA and billing and all the big hairy audacious things you guys are tackling. But let's kind of take a step back and for those that don't know you and your background, kind of give us the overview and what led you down the path to RevIO.
Sure, I'll try to be precise. And I think this is an awesome question. I love to humanize everybody in an organization and learn about their motivations. But so thank you for this question. But I started with a service provider, a technology service provider years ago called Cbeyond. I loved the company. I loved the culture. It was a meritocracy, very focused on promote from within. And I started on the sales side, got into leadership very early. I should mention that I learned a ton about the need to embrace failure, to learn and advance yourself as a sales rep out of college with just tons of ambition and zero experience. But through hard work and following the training that was put in place, was able to get myself into a leadership role. And I became super passionate about building teams that achieved extraordinary results. And so that certainly put me in a position to think a little bit differently. I think than my peers, I was very focused on finding success in my life, specifically in the business world. and the company was growing, and I took advantage of opportunities, and I moved when a lot of others wouldn't. Moved to Texas twice, California, Georgia. So I moved every other year almost for a decade, if you include moving from college. And so all in an effort to help build this company, but also further advance my understanding of business, experience as a leader. And ultimately that sort of gave me the entrepreneurial itch. That business, I would say, didn't have a happy ending. I kind of saw a cultural shift and left when I saw that, I didn't want to be inside of a huge corporation in the middle of that business. I wanted to be entrepreneurial, and I was running an office out west for the company. I felt like that was about the perfect size for me to be entrepreneurial. But as things changed, I said it's time for me to look elsewhere. And I ended up taking an opportunity with a private equity-backed healthcare provider company, and it was not the industry of choice. I had to learn over again. I ended up spending the first 3 months just meeting with doctors and facilities so that I could understand the value proposition. And I think that's really important to note, because inside of my own organization, and definitely starts with myself, I believe in going very deep, regardless of how far up the organizational ladder you're living at that moment in time. You should be able to go as deep as possible to really understand what's happening, how money's flowing through the company, what's the value proposition, industry trends. And so that helped me tremendously, because I came on in a sales role, but I had to report to a board. So I got to see how money flowed through the organization. I became the COO of that company, and then I was the interim CEO for 4 months. And it was a turnaround, and it was a disaster. There was everything from financial covenant issues to fraud issues, you name it. And
Ooh.
I always like to say it was an awesome experience, and I'm glad it wasn't with my equity.
Huh.
It was a bad investment by the private equity firm. I stayed for 2 years, and basically got to see it all. And you learn a ton through adversity. And so, but that said, I got enough experience where I said, you know what, I know I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. It's time for me to figure out how to take that step. And that's when I found RevIO, and I invested in the company in 2013, joined as CEO. It was a lifestyle business, very small, about 2 million in revenue, maybe even a little bit less. It was a different company name, different organizational structure. It was just really solid technology. And we'll get into what we do, but essentially serving the market I came from. And so I loved the idea of being able to have a solution, and being an entrepreneur, providing a solution back to a market that I really had passion about, and technology. And so that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and a high level summary of what led me, to that point.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think you learn, you do, and it is a fact that you learn more through adversity than you do through the shiny, happy, sunshine and rainbows kind of days. What I guess dealing kind of with that environment, right? It's a turnaround. You had some, sounds like there's some fraud issues. You had a private equity that came in, probably had a certain expectation. Sounds like that's kind of the perfect confluence, or that's a recipe for some really hard conversations, hard decisions, hard times. What was the most difficult portion, or part of that experience, as you're kind of in the middle of it, as you kind of think back on that?
Yeah, Kevin, there was a lot, but that's the private equity firm bought majority of the company. The founder was not honest, and so
Mhm.
I learned a ton about how that process works, and the motivation of those to show their true colors, right, when there's money on the line. And so we had to separate that. The decision was to separate the executive leadership of the business, right as I was coming on board.
Mm.
So it was very difficult to establish trust with the team. Um, the the natural swing of the private equity firm was to be financially focused, and it made a lot of sense to be. And you have to have financial prudence in a company. And I really valued that focus itself, but they lost sight of the need to provide transparency, to the employees and team and create alignment. And that's something that we did really well at my first company, where I got tons of experience. It was fast growing. It was the company was called Cbeyond. And so I brought that to the table. It was a huge source of friction when I kept explaining we've got to get in front of the employees as we make changes. But specifically, some of the hardest areas for us were the founder had done a huge amount of hiring right after the close. It was almost sort of empire building. It was very foolish and self-focused. And so we had to go through a round of layoffs because we had bank covenant issues. We were in forbearance. I didn't even know what that meant at the time.
Right.
And so I hated that process. I had a lot of disputes with other managers because I didn't feel like they were spending time with their people. And I had to experience it. And I made a decision that I'm going to do everything in my power for the rest of my career to not have to go through a riff. And there was a second round proposed. And so I fought against it. I remember being up at 4:00 in the morning. I called the board and I got a guy on the phone. And I said, hey, I don't think we own this one. The first one, the founder owned, he's gone. We own this. And I don't want to do it. And my proposal was, let's do pay cuts. And that is super painful, especially for those who really care, right? You're telling someone that's putting extra effort, many years into a business. And now you're saying, hey, we have to take from you. And my point was, let's do this and allow self-selection. We'll find out who really wants to be here. And so at that point, I took over as president of the company. I got in front of the company and orchestrated a pay cut. And it was my idea. I made them aware of it. And I told them, look, it's either this or we do layoffs. And I don't want to make a decision on a spreadsheet with people's names on it.
Right.
I want this to be about who really wants to be here. And if we achieve a certain milestone of revenue growth by a certain period, what we promised the employees was that we would make them whole. And that meant take their money back to their original salary or pay, plus pay them back the difference in their pay cut during that period of time. So we figured out that was, to me, that was the right way to go about it. And what ended up happening is people left that said, I'm not doing this. We did say you have to do extra. We have to have record performance. So obviously we're going to take some money and expect more to everybody. We navigated that period, that very difficult period, really well. And we got through it and saved the business. And everyone that stayed got their money back. And those that self-selected, there were enough of those people that we were able to meet the financial, the financial measurements from a cost savings perspective that the board and the banks needed. And so it was really difficult. But there was other difficult situations, but I learned a lot about it, a lot about business and culture and how, finance and culture, they're tied. The stronger your culture is, I believe it does show up on your P&L. The problem is you have to understand that is a dotted line, not a straight line. And if you're looking just purely for a straight line that shows it, you're not going to find it. You have to understand how business works. And that was helpful for my credibility with the team, helpful for credibility with the greater organization, and it certainly led to a good outcome for everybody.
Yeah, and it's funny is that looking or being involved in tech for so long, and I see, I don't know how to quantify it, a couple thousand vendors every year. Whether they're coming up on our platform or whether I'm looking at an advisory role or investment or something like that. The first thing I do, obviously, is go to the site just to see how the business is organized, how they talk about their, not just what they do, but how they talk about their customers and kind of their their value proposition. And I think that's one of the interesting things that it's funny that you're going down this path. I'm getting really a sense of like you're very mission oriented, right, and kind of outcomes oriented. But the way that you guys have structured your site, and then is really interesting, right? Because it's almost written in first person in a lot of ways, right? It's it's how we help you. It's how we, who we serve, what we do, how we empower you. And so I kind of get that. I don't know, maybe it's I don't know how involved you are with actually, front end and site. I'm sure you got a phenomenal team, but that kind of stuff starts from the top down, right? That ethos, that how you put yourself, out to the marketplace and what you want to convey. And I think that's kind of picking up a theme again. I have this. I try not to project my I don't know, not biases, but my observations. But I kind of get that clearly from what you guys are, what you guys communicate on the site. So for what that's worth, maybe that's I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. But
Well, thank you. That's reassuring to hear, because we're really intentional about the mission of the company. The mission of RevIO is to help our clients grow revenue efficiently.
yeah, yeah,
And that is a really simple statement. And I think it's a brilliant mission, and I'm very passionate about it because you can use it in a conversation about almost every decision within the business,
yeah,
right? When we're changing the way we serve a customer, we can ask ourselves, is this helping our clients grow revenue efficiently? When we're building a new application, when we have a roadmap project, when we have conflicting priorities, which one of these is going to best help us enable our clients to grow revenue efficiently? And so it's an actionable, it's a challenge, it's a charge. And so to hear that it's coming through, from our website, that's fantastic. I hope it comes through all of our content. And I think it just speaks to the simplicity of it and the fact that it's not wall art. It's really woven into the fabric of everything we do. And it's a big part of decision making for our company.
yeah. I think any, it's true of any MSP, certainly the vendors, any vendors listening. I mean, that the simplicity and kind of that, being straightforward, not being overly verbose, right? And just talking directly to the customer, and that kind of the mission that you guys do that clearly, exceptionally well on the site. But let's get into because you're saying when you jumped on, right, it was small, kind of sub 2 million. You've had this really interesting kind of progression over the last 12 years, 10, 12, 13 years, like that. So take us through, like, all right, where you guys were, right? And then what was your vision in kind of scale, and then you had kind of rebranding, and so take us through kind of that process, and let's and take us up to where we are today, because you got some really interesting things that are coming out over the next, soon. But take us through kind of what your thought process was in kind of jumping on, and what were you looking, what were you projecting forward or looking forward through this business?
Yeah, so I'll try to do this
Big
timely.
question. Yeah.
But yeah, so upon joining RevIO, it was not RevIO. It had a consulting name to Overgroup Consulting. We didn't feel like that made any sense, and I think it made sense for that earlier period of the business's life cycle, where essentially, if a customer comes along, you find out what their needs are, and you continue to evolve a solution for them with a consultative approach. But it didn't really clearly illustrate what the business was going to be about, what it needed to be about, and what we actually do. And so it was also in a small town in Florida, and we knew early on, we've got to get to a major market so that we're accessible to our clients. The first cycle of the business was about 10 years. Like I mentioned, it was sort of a lifestyle business. I think there was like 4 or 5 customer visits. You had to go through a major city to get there. So people are not going to do that. We moved to Atlanta, and within the first quarter, we doubled the amount of people that had been on site in the previous 10 years in 1 quarter. And now we have clients on site all the time. And so it was about being accessible. It was about finding the right talent. It was about finding the right support. Your everything from accountants to legal teams to insurance, and also being in a technology market. Atlanta is an emerging technology market. It's certainly the payments hub of America, and
Yeah.
we can reach 75% of the population with a 2.5-hour direct flight. And so it made tons of sense. RevIO, we changed that name because we wanted something that really illustrated what we do, and it's revenue input output. And we have an end-to-end SaaS-based sophisticated billing and customer management solution that helps customers with recurring billing and usage billing models. And so it really illustrated what we were about. It also was super, again, simple. Our company name is also our domain. And so it really just simplified things for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as we evolved, coming on, I'll go back 10 years, it was unclear where the value proposition really existed. And so we went and visited about 75% of the revenue, and we went through an exercise called start, stop, continue, because everyone's going to give you feedback. You have to be able to categorize it and connect dots between different customers and make sure you understand, are they saying the same thing just in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
And the best way for us to do that is we said, give us 3 starts, 3 stops, 3 continues, because I think I'll start with continue. You want to make sure that the things that they like, you don't stop doing. So you really need to ask, like, what is it that we're doing right now that's really working for you? And I wanted to make sure that we didn't make a mistake by taking something away or shifting something that they really saw value in. And then what we did is figured out what did we need to stop doing. At that point in time, it was absolutely the categorization and consistency of how we serve the customer. And so we began to build out our client success team. And then what we need to start doing is things like, what is your long-term vision of the business? Like, what are the roadmap items of the company? Historically, like I mentioned, it was like whichever customer you're sort of interacting with was how they decided to evolve. There wasn't a strategy that was clearly put out to the market that said, here's where we're going with this solution. Here's why. And so that was great, because then the next few things they said is, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. And so they said, we want you to have a roadmap, and we want these things on that roadmap. And so that was super helpful. So that was the formation of our roadmap, which is how we do things today. And it's really been a mainstay for us, is get as close to our customers as possible, understand the trends in the market that we're serving, and do everything we can to keep them on the front end of it, and put pressure on ourselves to do that. And so how we think about growing our business is such that we pay attention very closely to what's happening in the market, what clients are telling us, tools that they're using. We do that through Connects events at industry shows. We attend tons of industry events. We have a really big customer event once a year on site. And then it's just ad hoc calls. There's about 50 customers of ours that I talk to regularly, oftentimes to learn about how they're operating their businesses, because our customers have recurring revenue businesses and they're selling technology. I always say to them, like, our metrics should probably be pretty close to each other. Like, we should probably care about the same things. Some of the best entrepreneurs I've ever met. As a matter of fact, some of the top entrepreneurs I know are actually clients of ours. And so that's really helpful. And so what's happened is, what we learned early on is we also brought to bear what we knew about the market. I was in a communications managed services business. We sold storage, backup, Office 360, email. We sold communication services, voice, website services, data connectivity. So the whole gamut. Most of it was on the telecom side. And they're all calling themselves managed service providers now. You have your pure play IT MSP. So there's all these different blends now. Back then, they kind of called telecom MSP. They were sort of segregated. And what is really trending is the fact that there's a convergence between the two. And so how that's evolved is we obviously grew organically. We've emerged as a leader, definitely on the communications billing side. And we started paying attention to what could help clients be more efficient. And one of the first things we started to do was build out world-class end user portals. These are portals that our customers can provide to their end business customer for self-service, submitting orders, tickets, bill pay, all that type of good stuff, reporting. And we made it extremely robust and won a number of awards for it by working alongside some of our most strategic clients. From there, we came up with something that they didn't necessarily ask for directly, but we figured out was going to make them highly efficient, and that's fully integrated payments. We had done about 50 integrations to all these random payment providers out there. Our customers just brought a different one every time they came on board, and we just integrated to it, but it lived outside of our system. And the relationship with that processor was non-existent. And we figured out that if we have, some of the best, most innovative things you can do as an entrepreneur in technology is put two technologies together, right? You don't always have to build the newest thing. Some of the most innovative things out there are putting two technologies together, right? Yeah. And what we did is we took payment processing and our SaaS platform and integrated the two, and we became a full integrated payments provider. 80% of our clients on that side of our business are leveraging that solution for us. And it's helped them be wildly successful and eliminate a vendor, eliminate cost, and also have better chargeback management, better solutions. And so we just kept building on things like that, right? And we did a round of funding in 2020. We were bootstrapped all the way until 2020. We picked the most adverse time, maybe in my entire lifetime and yours, to go through a financial transaction. We had a deal. We started confirmatory diligence mid-February of 2020, the worst possible timing ever. And we were supposed to close 30 days later. And about a week before that happened, the entire world shut down.
Right. Oh
And
my goodness.
yeah, you have to just sort of manage through adversity. Well, we knew that, one of the things that was awesome was watching what our clients did for the economy. Certainly our clients are not first responders. They're not healthcare providers. Those were the real heroes during that period of time. But after that, it was who keeps the economy going. And
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, and it's connectivity. And you can't imagine the number of people that became a hybrid workforce, or frankly fully remote at that point in time, and how many businesses were not ready for that at all and hadn't
Oh
even
yeah.
thought about it. And our clients really jumped into action, and they kept a lot of companies alive during that period of time. We got to witness it, and obviously our software helped them do it. And so really meaningful things that we did during that time. We ended up closing on that financial transaction with a private equity firm called Primus Capital Partners. They're awesome. And one of the reasons why we picked them is because of how deep they got into our industry and our business. And I had a customer during reference calls say to me, "How did you find an industry specific investment firm for software companies?" I said, they were not knowledgeable of this industry 6 months ago. They just have really dug in. And so we picked a partner that, for us, it was not about just money. It was about who's really going to help us. And I felt like having a professionalized board at that period of time was going to help me guide the company to its potential. And it was a good decision. They've been phenomenal. We've executed 4 acquisitions with them. And most recently that was a MSP PSA platform called Tiger Paw. Very well known. What's amazing is how much the community is rooting for that business.
Yeah.
And I see you shaking your head. Everyone sort of smiles, and it was a platform that, from a technology perspective, had been neglected, but it has really good bones, and it sits at this intersection between your MSP, whether it's a commercial aggregator or sort of pure play IT MSP, and communications. And really what's happened is the Microsofts of the world, the Zooms of the world, the Ciscos of the world, they have been pushing collaboration services, which are communication services, through their channel, which is through distributors to ISPs. And so that's driving the markets together. And so, our customers again said to us, like, you need a PSA platform, and we do not like the options that are out there. There is nothing as elegant as RevIO on that side of the world, and that world's huge. And so we didn't come up with this idea. I wish I could tell you that we did, but we didn't. And I'm grateful that we just have a strong voice of customer and an understanding of what's happening in the markets. And really, it's knowing that it's always changing. And so we decided we're not going to build one from scratch. We need the right people, and we need the right customers to listen to. So we acquired Tiger Paw, and we said to ourselves, okay, how are we going to be different? And the way we're going to be different is by building that functionality into our current communications billing platform from scratch, with an API and AI first solution that has fully integrated payments and the only complex communications and PSA platform that exists on the planet. And we think that is going to be a really deep moat. And we think it's going to provide a ton of value to both sides of these industries as they come together. You don't need to sell both. You can have them independently. It's software. We have the ability to modularize our platform, but it's for those that are in the communication space, the MSP space, or really the third leg of that stool, where you really are going to have us, as if you're doing both. And I'll say this as I end, is that we also will focus not just on what our customers say, but what our customers' end customers telling them. And here's what we know now that is completely unacceptable. And everybody knows this. If you are selling communication services and you have an IT MSP practice, you have to send that end customer multiple invoices because there is no system that exists that does both. So, they're getting two bills. That means the provider of both those services has two sources of customer record, right? And they have two platforms that are tracking AR. They have multiple portals for that same customer to log into to pay their bill and submit tickets. It's a mess, right? And we kind of think about things like, what would a consumer say? They would say, get out of here. Like, none of us are getting local long distance internet and IT phone, bills right now. We get things consolidated. We get it delivered to us in a manner in which we want to consume it. And we make it easy to pay, easy to consume, easy to use, easy to interact with. And so we're taking that expectation of what a business customer should demand, and we're building that into our current solution. And that is what that acquisition was the catalyst of that type of outcome. And we're well on our way. We have multiple focus groups. We have a lot of the scheduling completed, time tracking inside the system. The customer management portion is really coming together, and we will be in market with that new application next year, halfway through next year, and we will be taking on the major PSA players by the end of next year. And we think that they're on their heels. I just read an article yesterday that the MSP market's growing at 14% year over year. The two largest PSA providers and RMM providers are both growing slower than that.
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting metric to me. That tells me that those that are entering this market are not selecting the legacy players that are out there. And it's clear to us that the technology from the software providers to the MSP has fallen way behind. And the MSP's expectations are changing because they're delivering next generation technologies to their business customers, and they're going to demand out of their vendors that they get the same type of technology. And today they're not.
Absolutely. God, there's so many nuggets in what you just talked about, because, I'll start to organize the progression here, but I completely agree with you. Like, there's, it's interesting that you took the reins at a time where there's this explosion of the telco marketplace, right? With the Sandlers and the Avants and the Telarises, that whole connectivity marketplace, and you had this massive groundswell. Then you had coming from the other angle. When I give public talks about the marketplace, I give this specific example because you have the telcos that were kind of up here in this segment of the marketplace, and they weren't necessarily focused on recurring revenue. A lot of them came out of hardware, and they were conditioned for that big transaction, and then they layered in connectivity, and they started to realize there's beauty in subscription and recurring. But then they started looking at this, the MSP marketplace is starting to get, a ton of M&A traction, a ton of roll-up traction, and they're starting to come down and level up to the the recurring revenue models. And so it's interesting, kind of the timing where you kind of came in and re-architect the organization, and I think secondarily, I think it's actually a brilliant approach, starting with the billing. Start with the biggest, most complicated issue that an MSP or any IT service provider faces, right? It's always billing, whether it's billing back to the vendor or it's billing to the customer. Like, billing consumes, an inordinate amount of time operationally for every MSP, right? And so the fact that you started, and you solved those problems, and then you layered in the PSA. I think tactically, I think that's a brilliant move, because at most, in what you've seen over the last 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years now, is that the major PSA players, they are starting to, they're taking notice, and they're bolting on, they're going the other way, right? They're trying to bolt on, billing, subscription management, payments, what have you. But they're bolting them on to some of these legacy platforms that were built 20 years ago, 18,
right.
17 years ago. And then you have this other kind of end of the marketplace. To your point, you're talking about the CAGR and the market growing at a certain level. The big guys, they're not growing at that same pace. You've got, others, including yourself, coming in and growing at far greater, compounded growth rates. So it's really interesting. I don't know, you could probably teach a master class on how to time a marketplace and how to bolt on, technologies, because you're clearly at this point where, and I guess the last thing I say, I appreciate that the fact that you're not rushing it, right? I mean, 'cause I think that's another thing, right? It's like, there's, acquisition, rush. They don't figure out the workflow integrations, don't figure out, really kind of business, challenges that they're solving. And then they come out and they, it's kind of a dud. And it sounds like you guys are taking a very mission-oriented, methodical approach to bringing that to market. So shoot, I can go on for, another 15, 20 minutes on my rant here, but no, I think the way you're approaching this marketplace is exactly how the market needs to be approached, because everybody else is kind of come at the, kind of in the inverse, and it's led to a ton of challenges, a ton of,
It's hard.
unnecessary churn. Yeah.
Billing is what's great for us positionally, and look, this is opportunistic, is that communications billing is some of the hardest billing on the planet. Our rating engine is doing billions and billions of usage at a time. It's wild, and enabling our communications clients to apply limitless rates and packages and pricing models, because they have to compete with the overlying tier ones that have football stadiums named after them, right? And so, and they've done that and figured it out, leveraging our system. And so for us to move into the managed services world with PSA, one, we even identified we don't want to do this alone. Let's acquire experience, which is what we got from Tiger Paw. Let's acquire customers again, so that we understand what the customer's needs are. And I would not want to be the other way around. I would not want to be trying to figure out how to build a communications billing platform to take advantage of the same convergence. And there's no question in my mind that every PSA provider on earth would love to have the types of
Yeah.
communications customers that RevIO does. They are the stickiest customers. They are growing.
Yeah.
They're great payers. They're innovative. They're at size and scale. And so, that's something that's really fortunate for us. And what I hope, listeners get out of this is that we've seen a lot of MSPs start to offer voice services or decide for themselves, no way, I don't want the tax, the compliance, the regulatory, all that exists. RevIO solves all of that and has been for a long time, and is the leader in this space. And we understand how to simplify, those challenges, so that an MSP can focus on just continuing to grab additional wallet share and having a sticky end customer with a better experience. And so I do think that puts us at an advantage, and I hope that we're all right. And frankly, the whole masterclass statement, I think that the momentum of the industry is almost is making us look pretty favorable. I'd humbly say, like, if the addressable market of the MSP space, which is huge, was a fraction of the size, we would be doing the exact same thing. Again, because it goes back to what is going to help our clients grow revenue efficiently. And that's what drives our thoughts and decisions. And then the last thing I'd say is, we are being very thoughtful about our approach, but we are being freaking relentless to get this thing to market. I'm relentless with my team to go faster. Our development output is up over 36% this year. We have a working backwards approach, just very similar to Amazon. We start with a press release for every little module of this application. What is the customer's value? We obsessively get into the details of it before we even put fingers on keyboards. We're leveraging AI to create the best solutions. And so, although we're being thoughtful, we are being just relentless to try and get this thing built and to market, because we do think that until that happens, there's just a huge, void. And we want to capitalize on the market opportunity, and we want to give our clients the best advantage possible as fast as possible.
Well, it sounds like you guys are doing a heck of a job, and you're certainly on your way there. Look, I want to be respectful of your time, and just thank you for jumping on. We'll obviously have links in the show notes, and And I have to encourage the entire industry, both sides, right? Maybe not the competitors to you, but the vendors definitely go out and again, you see how they've organized their business, how they talk to their customer, and kind of the value, how they've broken it out in different, basically. I think there's sections on the site where you talk about value for the CEO and kind of get into the kind of the details that the customer is looking for. But then there's certainly on the customer side, right? It's yeah, you guys have solved the big, hairy, audacious problems that have historically deterred a lot of the MSPs from looking at this marketplace because they think of the billing challenges alone can be daunting. And so definitely head over to the site. It's just rev.io. Pretty simple. Head over, check it out because I think you guys are certainly more than onto something. So anyway, with that, Brent, now thank you very much for hopping on. And yeah, I'm gonna look forward to tracking you guys here over the next couple of years here to see just how massive you guys grow, and maybe one day you guys have your name on a stadium or something. We'll see.
Well, it was my pleasure to come on, and thank you for giving us a platform to share our story and insights into sort of how I think about the business. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, and we'll see everybody next week. Thank you.